So you finish a massive, grueling, like 6-month project. The team is completely exhausted.
Oh, absolutely drained.
Right. And what happens next? Management schedules a mandatory 2-hour lessons learned workshop.
Oh, usually in a stale, windowless conference room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You sit there trying desperately to remember what went wrong in like month 1. Someone writes these really vague bullet points on a whiteboard. The meeting ends, and then everyone just goes right back to their desks to make the exact same mistakes on the very next project.
Yeah, it's really one of the most persistent illusions in modern business.
Why do we keep pretending that reality pauses so we can learn from it?
Well, because we treat learning as a discrete, scheduled event. Like it's just a box you check off. You hit a project milestone, you do a post-mortem, and you just assume the organization has successfully captured the knowledge.
But work doesn't function like a calendar invite.
No, it really doesn't.
And that brings us to the desk today. We have a really fascinating stack of sources to look at, a detailed framework document titled Cadence That Works, and a series of diagrams outlining something called the diamond.
Yeah, and the diagrams are incredibly detailed.
They are. So our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle the traditional linear way you think about your daily tasks. We are going to look at how learning actually happens, not in a conference room, but, in the trenches of everyday work.
I love that. Because the core problem with those traditional governance systems, the scheduled workshops, the formal project reviews, all those rigid stage gates where management just stops everything to decide if a project can proceed.
Right, the typical corporate bottlenecks.
Exactly. The problem is they assume a static environment. But reality unfolds continuously. I mean, every single decision you make creates immediate consequences.
Right.
And every physical action generates immediate feedback.
So if every feedback loop creates an opportunity for learning, waiting 6 months for a formal postmortem means you are letting, like, an enormous amount of vital insight just evaporate.
Completely evaporate. You lose it all.
Okay, let's unpack this. The diamond framework we are looking at today is built entirely to capture that continuous, messy reality. But to understand how it completely rewrites team dynamics, we need to look at the mechanics of this diamond. What exactly is the engine driving this concept?
Right. So at its center, the diamond framework maps a continuous 8-step cycle. It basically maps how a task moves from an abstract thought into a concrete result and then into permanent knowledge.
8 steps, okay.
Yeah, and the cycle moves clockwise. It goes define task, planning, development, implementation, assessment, reflection, lessons, and finally, character.
Wow, okay, let's slow that down and walk through a practical example, because just reading 8 abstract nouns in a row can feel a bit like, reading a corporate manual.
Fair enough.
Let's say I am drafting an important client proposal.
Perfect example. So you start at step 1. You define the task, like, we need a proposal to win this client.
Makes sense.
Then you move to planning. That's gathering the financial data, maybe scheduling the timeline. Then development, where you actually write the draft and build the slide deck.
Right.
Finally, implementation. You pitch the proposal to the client.
Which is where traditional management usually stops.
Yeah.
Right? Pitch is done, task completed, cross it off the list.
Exactly. The first 4 steps are purely about execution. But the framework argues that if you stop there, you haven't actually learned anything.
You've just expended energy.
Right. The back half of the cycle is where the actual value is captured. So after the pitch, you move to assessment. Like, did the client look confused during the pricing slide?
Oh, I see.
Then reflection. Why were they confused? Was our formatting unclear or was our math wrong? From there, you extract lessons. So next time, we put the pricing breakdown in a simpler chart.
And then there is that final step, character. I gotta say, seeing the word character in a business framework really got me off guard.
It stands out, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it implies that by going through this process, the worker's fundamentally altered.
Well, they are. But in this context, character isn't about being like a morally good person.
Right, it's not an ethics test.
No, it's about professional capacity. It means you have internalized the lesson so deeply that your baseline judgment has actually improved. So the next time you face a similar problem, your intuition will be sharper.
So that is the 8-step engine. But the sources we have actually include 3 different visual models of this diamond.
Yes, the diagrams add a lot of context here.
There is a red diamond and a gray diamond, and they both share that exact same 8-step inner cycle. But the outer context of the diagrams shifts dramatically.
It does.
Like the red diamond is framed by abstract concepts. The points are labeled with things like vision, adaptability, exchange, and abundance.
Because the red diamond represents the conceptual space of our work. It is the realm of strategy, creative problem solving, infinite possibility.
Yeah, but you cannot build a physical project purely out of vision. Eventually, gravity and budgets get involved.
Exactly. And that brings in the gray diamond.
Right, which has the same internal engine, but its outer borders are rooted in the physical world. So instead of vision, it is governed by politics, economics, social milieu, and the physical environment.
Right. And the most crucial diagram in the sources actually synthesizes these two realities. It shows this 3D side view where the red diamond, representing abundance, is stacked directly on top of the gray diamond, which represents accountability.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and the entire structure functions like a spinning gyroscope, flanked by adaptability and anticipation.
Wait, hold on. I understand the theory of blending vision and accountability, but isn't that inherently a paradox?
How so?
Well, how can a team constantly look at the limitless horizon of possibility while simultaneously staring down at a strict, unforgiving budget sheet? You're asking people to be two completely different things at once.
It is a paradox, yes, and that tension is precisely the point. The framework doesn't ask you to resolve the paradox. It asks you to manage it.
Manage the tension.
Exactly. As a professional, you are required to operate in both spaces simultaneously. You have to push the boundaries of what is possible while remaining firmly anchored to what is physically and economically viable.
I see.
The gyroscope stays upright because of that constant spinning tension between the two halves.
Okay, I have to step in and play the role of the busy, overwhelmed professional here.
Please do.
Because if I'm supposed to maintain the tension of a gyroscope and go through an 8-step cycle, including dedicated assessment, reflection, and character building just to send an email or draft a quick memo, aren't I going to be incredibly unproductive?
That is the most common pushback this framework receives.
I mean, I just don't have the time to sit and meditate on the profound lessons of every minor task on my to-do list.
It sounds like a new, heavy administrative burden.
Right, it really does.
But it's vital to understand that the diamond is not a bureaucratic checklist you are supposed to fill out. It is a map of human cognition.
Oh, a map.
Yeah, it is describing what a competent professional already does entirely unconsciously.
Unconsciously. So my brain is already doing the 8 steps.
Think about what happens when you send a highly sensitive email to a difficult stakeholder. You don't take out a notepad and write, Step 1, define task.
Obviously not.
But your brain instantly calculates the objective. You quickly plan your phrasing, you type it out, and you hit send. Implementation.
Right.
Then, when they reply with an angry, confusing response, you automatically assess the damage. You reflect on which word triggered them. You mentally file away a lesson to never use that specific phrasing with them again.
Ah. And the next time I email them, I am slightly more cautious. So my professional character, my judgment, has been updated.
Exactly. The diamond isn't telling you to stop and formally evaluate every email. It is simply giving us a visible shared language for a cognitive process that is already happening.
That makes so much more sense.
Yeah, every competent human unconsciously moves through cycles of intention, action, evaluation, and adjustment.
Okay, but if human brains do this automatically on a small scale, how does this apply to the massive multi-year projects that companies actually struggle with?
That brings us to a fascinating concept in the sources. The idea that this framework is a fractal.
A fractal. Okay, let's get into this.
Fractals are crucial for understanding complex systems. In mathematics or nature, a fractal is a geometric pattern that repeats exactly the same way, no matter how far you zoom in or zoom out.
Like a snowflake.
Right. Or if you look at a single frond of a fern, it has the exact same shape as the entire leaf.
And the sources apply this fractal concept directly to the workplace. So the 8-step learning cycle remains constant, only the scale of time and complexity changes.
Exactly.
There's a great example in the text to illustrate what they call a micro-diamond. It describes an apprentice on a busy construction site whose only job for the next 10 minutes is to find a water supply to mix some cement.
It is a trivial task, right?
Yeah.
But the entire cycle is present.
It really is. So they define the need. Water. They plan. Where's the nearest spigot? They develop. They grab a heavy-duty bucket. They implement. They walk across the site and collect the water.
And then the back half kicks in.
Right. They assess. Is this enough water for the mix? They reflect. Man, my boots got covered in deep mud taking that specific pass around the scaffolding. Lesson.
Yeah.
Next time, take the slightly longer but paved path by the east wall. Character. The apprentice has just become a slightly more efficient, reliable worker.
One full cycle executed in minutes.
It's brilliant.
And that is the microscale. But because it is a fractal, we can scale it up to a professional diamond.
Which takes longer.
Right. This might take a few days or weeks. It could be an architect drafting a specific spatial layout, or a contractor tightening a critical bolt, or an engineer calculating the structural load on a complex beam.
The technical demands are infinitely higher than carrying a bucket of water.
Sure, but the underlying rhythm of intention, action, and reflection remains identical.
And it scales up even further to project diamonds. I feel like this is where you really see the framework's power. The exact same pattern applies to a task that takes months or years.
Yes, the technical task changes, but the learning cycle rhythm does not.
Like, think about something highly technical, like building a digital twin.
Oh, great example.
For those unfamiliar, a digital twin is this wildly complex virtual 3D simulation of a building or system. Engineers use it to run stress tests, like simulating an earthquake or a massive power failure, before they ever pour a single ounce of real concrete. Building that digital twin is a massive diamond.
And building the physical skyscraper itself is an even larger diamond. The timeline stretches from 10 minutes to 10 years, but the mechanism of learning does not change.
My first thought when reading this was that it operates like a Russian nesting doll of productivity.
Oh, I like that.
You have this massive multi-year project doll, but you open it up, and inside are a bunch of monthly milestone dolls. Open those and you find weekly objective dolls, daily task dolls, and all the way down to minute-by-minute decision dolls. They all have the exact same shape.
A nesting doll definitely helps visualize the scale, but we probably should evolve that metaphor slightly.
Okay, why is that?
Well, nesting dolls are static. They just sit passively inside one another. A much more accurate way to picture the fractal diamond is to look at the interlocking gears of a mechanical watch.
Oh, interlocking gears. How so?
In a watch, you have a tiny, rapidly spinning microcog. That is your daily task. But the teeth of that microcog are directly interlocked with a larger, slower-moving gear, your weekly objectives.
Yeah.
And that gear turns an even larger, massive wheel, the year-long project. The rapid spinning of the tiny daily learning cycles actively drives the forward momentum of the massive macro cycles. They feed information and kinetic energy into one another.
Wow. Okay, that makes perfect sense. Because if a project was just static nesting dolls, a delay in a daily task wouldn't really affect the outer shell.
Exactly.
But if they are interlocking gears, a tiny cog getting jammed immediately creates friction for the massive project wheel. And that really highlights the flaw of how we traditionally plan work, especially in fields like architecture, engineering, and construction.
Yeah, traditional management loves the illusion of a straight line.
They love a Gantt chart. A Gantt chart is that classic project management visual with a cascading waterfall of horizontal bars. Task A must be fully completed before Task B can begin, which triggers Task C.
It assumes a perfect vacuum where everyone works in strict isolation and hands off a flawless product to the next person.
Which never happens.
Never. Reality is rarely so tidy. Because my output is your input, our learning cycles fundamentally overlap.
Right.
The text introduces this as interlocking diamonds. Projects aren't single diamonds, they are systems. The architect's gear turns the structural engineer's gear. The structural gear turns the fabricator's gear, which connects to the installation team, which finally turns the commissioning gear.
It is not a straight line of dominoes, it is a massive web of gears.
Exactly.
The sources use a really evocative phrase here. They say a complex project is not a checklist, it is a constellation.
A constellation. It's great imagery.
It really is. It's a constellation of interconnected learning cycles, all operating simultaneously, each with its own stakeholders, budget constraints, and feedback loops.
Which brings us to the defining challenge of modern work.
Right. Because a constellation of hundreds of independent learning cycles sounds like an absolute nightmare to manage.
It certainly can be.
I mean, if I am spinning in my own reflective cycle and you are spinning in yours and there are 100 other contractors doing the same thing, without a traditional dictator at the top barking orders and keeping everyone in line, how do you prevent absolute chaos?
It requires a profound shift in what we value in our teams. If you want to keep the gears turning smoothly without micromanagement, the source text points to one absolute necessity: relational intelligence.
Relational intelligence. Okay, let's unpack that. What exactly is that in this context? Because it sounds a bit like, corporate speak for just being nice to your coworkers.
I get that, but it goes much deeper than being polite. In an interlocking system, information must move fluidly. The lessons learned by a fabricator on a Tuesday must travel instantly to the structural engineering team so they don't design a beam that can't actually be built.
That makes sense.
Relational intelligence is the capability of a team to systematically surface hidden assumptions. It is the trust and psychological safety required for a junior team member to raise their hand and say, hey, my gear is stuck, and if I don't get help, it's going to break the larger project wheel.
But how do we actually build that? How do you operationalize trust when the project is behind schedule and everyone is stressed out? You can't just mandate relational intelligence.
No, you definitely can't. You have to build a structure that naturally forces those conversations to happen.
Okay.
And that is the operational core of the entire document. You operationalize it through Cadence. Because the diamond framework is fractal, you can calibrate different gears to spin at different speeds. The text breaks this down into highly structured daily, weekly, and monthly rhythms.
Okay, let's get into these cadences because this is where the theory becomes highly actionable for you, the listener. Let's look at how to actually run these gears. First is the daily diamond.
Right.
And the focus here is strictly on the first half of the cycle. Define, plan, and implement.
The questions asked in a daily cadence are immediate and highly tactical. What are we doing today? What specific risks exist? What must be completed before we go home?
The core purpose of the daily diamond is simply alignment. It reminds me a lot of a brief morning stand-up meeting.
It's very similar, yeah.
But a lot of teams do stand-ups wrong. They treat it as a status update to prove to the boss they are working. The framework suggests it should be about calibrating the small gears, like, I am doing X, which will affect your Y.
Exactly. It's tactical coordination.
Right.
But the daily diamond alone is dangerous because it operates entirely in the execution phase. There's absolutely no time to reflect.
Right.
That is why the mechanism of the weekly diamond is so critical. The focus of the weekly cadence shifts entirely to the back half of the cycle. Assess and reflect.
So the questions shift from what are we doing to what just happened, what worked, what failed, and what are we learning from those failures?
Yes. And the text notes a very specific purpose for this weekly rhythm: to prevent firefighting from becoming normal.
Wow. That phrase is a gut punch. To prevent firefighting from becoming normal.
It's so common, isn't it?
How many teams do you know that exist in a permanent state of emergency? Every deadline is a crisis. Every deliverable requires working through the weekend.
Too many.
And it happens because they are stuck in a broken loop of implementation. They're putting out fires every single day, but they never trace the smoke back to find the faulty wiring that keeps starting the fires in the first place.
Because tracing the wiring requires stopping the work. The mechanism of the weekly diamond provides a structured, mandatory pause.
Which is so hard to do.
It is. But it takes the team out of the panic of execution and forces them into reflection. If you do not institutionalize a time for reflection, you will inevitably institutionalize chaos.
That is profound. If you don't schedule the reflection, the chaos schedules itself.
Exactly.
And that leads us to the largest operational gear,
Yeah.
the monthly diamond. The focus here moves to the final stages of the cycle, lessons in character.
Right. The monthly cadence zooms out to the macro level. You are no longer looking at individual tasks or weekly fires. The questions are strategic. What broad patterns are emerging in our work?
Right.
What hidden habits are forming across the team? What localized lesson should we scale into standard practice for the whole company?
The stated purpose of the monthly diamond is transforming experience into capability. And we return to that word again, character.
It's the ultimate deliverable.
It really is. I want to highlight how fascinating it is to see a business framework use the word character as an actual deliverable. It's not just about building better buildings or writing better code. It's about acknowledging that the people doing the work are fundamentally changed by the process.
Yes.
Like, a senior engineer isn't just someone who has memorized more math equations than a junior engineer. A senior engineer has vastly superior professional character because they have successfully completed thousands more learning cycles.
They've put the reps in.
Exactly. They have made mistakes, assessed them, reflected on the root causes, and internalized the lessons until it became pure intuition. The monthly cadence is about actively building that judgment across the entire team, rather than just hoping it happens by accident.
It is a fundamentally human-centric view of productivity. Work changes the worker.
Beautifully said.
And, the framework actually grounds itself in the research of two major organizational thinkers to pull all of this big picture stuff together. It cites Donald Schoen and his concept of reflective practice.
All right. Schoen argued that the best professionals don't just apply textbook theories, They think about what they are doing while they are doing it. They course correct in real time.
Precisely. And it also cites Peter Senge, who championed the idea of the learning organization.
Nah.
Senge recognized that in a rapidly changing world, an organization that relies on rigid, static rules will eventually break. Only organizations that learn continuously can adapt and survive.
And the true brilliance of the Diamond Framework is that it takes those heavy academic concepts from Schoen and Senge and turns them into a mechanical reality. It gives you the actual gears.
It operationalizes the theory.
Right. Instead of waiting for a 6-month post-mortem to remember what you learned, the learning is embedded into the very rhythm of the day. The tiny micro-task learns, the team learns, the multi-year project learns. Improvement becomes the default state of the organization.
When the cadences are running correctly, the rhythm carries the improvement. You don't have to force it. It makes improvement normal rather than exceptional. It becomes as natural as breathing. You inhale action through planning and implementation, and you exhale insight through assessment and reflection.
You inhale action. You exhale insight. I love that. That perfectly captures the essence of these sources. We began by looking at the dread of the scheduled post-mortem. The illusion that learning is an event you just put on a calendar.
And we've ended up with a mechanical blueprint for continuous embedded growth.
We really have. For you listening, we hope this framework shatters the illusion of the linear to-do list. Your workday isn't just a waterfall of isolated tasks. You are operating within a dynamic, interconnected constellation of learning opportunities. Every email, every challenging meeting, every blocked project is a diamond waiting to be completed.
It genuinely transforms the texture of a challenging workday. A failure is no longer just a failure, it is raw material for the reflection phase.
Exactly. So as you head back to your own desk and look at the real-world tasks in front of you, we want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. Think about the tasks on your plate right now. What microdiamond are you currently stuck in? And be honest with yourself. Have you been skipping the reflection and lessons phases just to get to the finish line? What would actually happen if you paused just for a second to close that cycle? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.